Welcome back. It has been a while since I made a video, and I do apologize. This school year was an all hands on deck sort of experience, but summer is here, and I wanted to show you what I've been up to since my last Senko Hanabi video. Now, in that last video, I tried about 14 different types of paper out, the kind of paper that anyone could find around their house. I certainly came to the conclusion that as long as the paper wasn't too thick and was able to hold a wrap, then it probably would work for Senko Hanabi. Now listen, I really want to thank you for all the thoughtful comments. Now, one of the most intriguing comments was from the channel Japan Videography. You should really check it out. It's a wonderful visual feast of amazing locations and events in Japan. So Japan Videography pointed out that although Gampi paper is sometimes used in Senko Hanabi, Kozo paper is often used because it is thicker and has stronger fibers than Gampi paper. Now that really had me intrigued. Gampi paper is a type of washi. Now that's the traditional Japanese paper, but it is not the only one. What if there was an even better type of washi paper than Gampi? The hunt was on. So paper making has been deeply ingrained in the Japanese experience for more than 1,000 years. So much so that in 2014, UNESCO, which is the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, added washi to what it called its list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Now, of course, I'm not sure how seriously we can take that list since it doesn't include Pittsburgh's own Permanente Brothers sandwich. But hey, maybe it'll make the list next year. So what makes washi so unique really starts with the source. It is crafted from the inner bark of different types of shrubs and trees. And these fibers are softened, but, and this is important, not pulverized. This allows them to retain the long fibers, which gives them their characteristic longevity and strength. Binding agents are then added to the slurry, and it is sieved onto large screens. The more slurry that is layered on top, the thicker the washi paper gets. These sheets are then carefully stacked and compressed to drive the water out. And what's left is a paper that is much stronger and more resilient than Western paper. It is truly the king of papers. Now, washi can be used for all kinds of things: books, umbrellas, toys, soji, those are the sliding door partitions and screens, even clothing. Yeah, you can use washi for clothing. So when you see someone getting thrown through a paper wall in a martial arts movie, that is a waste of perfectly good washi. There are 3 types of plants traditionally used for making washi. Gampi paper comes from Japanese shrubs from the Wistromia family. Gampi is considered the noblest fiber, known for its richness, dignity, longevity, and natural sheen. And Gampi is going into today's research as my personal favorite paper. The second type of paper uses the Mitsumata plant, a slower growing, more expensive paper. It is considered the feminine element of washi, but since it is more expensive, let's just go ahead and skip that paper. Now, the third type of washi, Kozo, is harvested from mulberry bushes. And now what's cool about that is that mulberry bushes regrow annually, so there's no forest depletion to make Kozo paper. Kozo is the masculine element and is the strongest of the 3 and most widely used. So if any paper has a chance to dethrone Gampi, Kozo is it. This video is not sponsored by either of the 2 companies that I am about to mention, or, really any company, actually. I've bought paper off both these companies just like any other customer, and in the past, I ordered my Gampi paper from Paper Connection, and I had nothing but positive interactions with that company. This time, however, I stumbled upon a sample pack from Hiromi Paper, and it contained 50 3-inch by 3-inch squares of washi, and that is an intoxicatingly large stack of possibilities. Now, it's not perfect. 3-inch by 3-inch squares are not ideal for Senko Hanabi. We actually like them to be closer to about 10 or 11 inches in length, but I was able to figure out how to jury rig the paper and get 2 samples from each square. Now, many of these paper samples are really too thick to use in Senko Hanabi, but I was able to push it and test about half of them, and I really learned a lot. So the thickness of paper is actually measured in what's called grams per square meter, and this is often referred to as GSM. Typical notebook paper is probably running anywhere from 70 to 90 GSM, with sketchbook paper well above 100 GSM. This number can go way higher or way lower depending on the quality of your paper. Now, smoking paper was not one of the papers in that sample pack from Hiromi Papers, but enough people brought it up as a potential paper that it was time to buy some and try it out. And one of those advocates was Dr. Frederik van der Sypt. Longtime fans might recognize that name from my American Senko video. You should check that out, it's pretty good. Now, as a non-smoker, I am at a bit of a disadvantage here, but there does seem to be a lot of variety in smoking papers. Some of them are billed as extra thin and weigh in at about 10 GSM, which is the same thickness as the Gampi paper I like to use. Now, as you can see, smoking paper works well, and I definitely think it is comparable to Gampi paper. Now, is smoking paper a Gampi paper killer? Well, let's get back to that at the end of the video. So what about like Rayon or Inkjet paper? Nope, not good at all. There was a lot of what I like to call overburn. So you see a good Senko Hanabi burns slowly, consuming the black powder pellet. So you're left with a dross ball that's hanging from unburnt paper. But when you get what I call overburn, the flame tends to race past the fledgling dross ball so that even if that dross ball forms, it's hanging from burnt paper. And so this is a much weaker anchor point, and that dross ball will almost inevitably break off and fall if it forms at all. Now, even worse, these papers had trouble holding the wrap. So if you look closely at them, you'll see them start to unravel as they burn. So that's really strike 2. And strike 3 was that they smelled awful when they are burning. I'm telling you, it smelled so bad that my wife complained about the odor the next day. So let's just move on. Now, there were about a dozen testable Kozo papers. They ranged from as thick as 30 GSM all the way down to 3 GSM. And I was really excited to test the Kozo because not only is it a stronger paper than Gampi, but it seems to relatively be cheaper also. But I never really hit that sweet spot. It was either too thick or too thin. Now, even in the 10 to 15 GSM range, I really wasn't super impressed with the Kozo paper. Now, I had a really small sample size, so perhaps somebody with better technique could coax out a better Senko. But this is where the noble qualities of Gampi paper win out on the aesthetics. Kozo might be a stronger paper, but it also really didn't look it nice. If you take a closer look, you'll see that there are a lot more stray fibers coming off the Senko, so it looks furry and not sleek and smooth. Now, even with its lackluster performance, it was fascinating to get to see what really thin washi paper looks like. I never thought I would get to play with 3 or 5 GSM paper, but at some point that paper was so thin that it really couldn't hold the powder or the dross ball. The ignition caused the black powder to flare out, so it looks like most of the powder gets blown out because the paper isn't thick enough to hold it in. Now, perhaps there was still hope for Kozo. There was over a half dozen Kozo mixes, Kozo blended with other materials. But don't hold your breath. I really didn't find anything I thought had potential in that batch either. So for me at least, Kozo is a no-no. Really, my only hope for finding any washi paper was returning to where it all started, and that was Gampi paper. Now, as expected, the thicker paper wasn't too great. Even a 20 GSM Gampi paper really didn't work well. But then I hit the 15 GSM Usuyo Gampi paper, and it felt special. I mean, it really physically felt special. I was actually gifted some Senko Hanabi paper used from an authentic Japanese manufacturer, and the one piece that I had left felt an awful lot like the 15 GSM paper. And that 15 GSM paper nurtured a really good-looking dross ball. It had all the stages, nice branching, nice sparking, and even the one that had the dross ball drop early still looked pretty good. And so at the very end, we had a winner, and it was Gampi paper again. In fact, I was so pleased with this 15 GSM paper that I went ahead and ordered my second and probably final roll of paper for Senko Hanabi. The first one was my 10 GSM Usuyo paper from Paper Connection, and then I bought a 15 GSM paper from Hiromi Paper. I guess I really see like 3 equally acceptable lanes going forward with Senko Hanabi paper. Lane number 1 we'll call the Guillotined chemistry lane, and this is using authentic Gampi washi paper. Now I'm leaning towards the 15 GSM Usuyo paper as my personal choice, but I think anything in the 10 to 15 GSM range is probably going to be successful paper. So what are the pros of using Gampi paper? I think it's the most authentic experience. It is a strong washi paper that resists tears and wraps well. It is aesthetically pleasing to work with, and I think it makes consistently excellent Senko Hanabi. The big con is that it is a more expensive option. When I do the math, it really comes down to about 10 cents of paper per Senko, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that price could go up or down depending on shipping. And that is also running under the very big assumption that you are buying a bulk roll of it, 5 meters or 10 meters. So that's going to set somebody back anywhere from, 75 to $100 probably. It is certainly an investment, no doubt about that. Now you can get around this by ordering smaller sheets, like 1 square meter sheets, but the price is going to go up and you still have to pay for shipping. So buying a roll of Gampi paper sounds like too much of a commitment, then you might want to consider the second option, which I will dub the Vandersyp, and that is using smoking paper. Now again, I don't know anything about smoking paper, but I did like what I saw with the little I used. And last time I checked, Dr. Vandersyp is using smoking paper for all of his Senko research. So if it's good enough for him, it's probably good enough for you. So I think the biggest pro of smoking paper is that it does feel a lot like Gampi paper. Even though it is going to cost you about 10 cents per Senko based on my calculations, you can buy smoking paper in much smaller amounts to get the 10 cent per Senko price. Now, I would recommend that you probably buy this stuff on the roll so that you can get the longer pieces that Senko Hanabi typically requires. So that's a little tougher to get access to. And the biggest caveat, the biggest con, is that smoking paper really can't be used in a school environment. At least at my high school, smoking paper would be listed as drug paraphernalia. So that is a non-starter to have lying around in a classroom environment. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, finally, the third lane, and I would be remiss not to include this, is classic simple tissue paper, as championed by Ben at NightHawkinLight. Good old cheap tissue paper, the kind you put in a gift bag, not the kind you blow your nose in. The pros are that it is easy to find, easy to experiment with small amounts of different types. And again, no real price barrier to entry here. Don't spring for the good stuff. Try different types of dirt cheap tissue paper, and I think you'll like what you find. In fact, I calculated that depending on how cheap you're willing to go, you could be looking at less than a penny's worth of paper per Senko Hanabi. So that's an order of magnitude less than Gampi paper. Now, there really isn't a con to tissue paper. I have some aesthetic quibbles. I personally don't think it wraps quite as nice or looks quite as nice as Gampi paper, but I bet technique would trump material any day of the week. So don't be afraid of tissue paper. Now, although this will probably be my last deep dive into paper for Senko Hanabi for a while, I still think there is a lot to explore about this topic. I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications so you'll know when I drop the video where I show the deep dive into all 24 samples, all the complete burns. And while you're waiting for that video, check out my first paper video called, I think, 14 Mysteries, and my soon-to-be classic overview of Senko Hanabi called American Senko. Get it? That it's a play on American Psycho? Anyway, until next time, stay safe and thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.